Dragon Ball hardly needs an introduction, for some because of how ubiquitous it is, and for others how foreign it felt to look into the abyss that it was. Years of lampoon and acknowledgement have made it a mainstay, but a while ago, and to some extent to this day, Dragon Ball was an outlandish fad, the epitome of the absurd and over-the-top culture clashing some were baffled by from the outside and utterly engrossed by as a direct consumer. A factor I feel undersung in irreversibly sewing Dragon Ball into our media zeitgeist is that of Dragon Ball video games. And while I watched my fair share of the anime growing up, I'd argue it was precisely these games that turned me into a die-hard fan of the monstrous franchise. Dragon Ball Z Budokai, Tenkaichi, Supersonic Warrior, Super Dragon Ball Z, Raging Blast, Burst Limit, Shin Budokai, Advanced Adventure, and most recently, Dragon Ball FighterZ. These were all titles that turned me from a mere viewer of Dragon Ball into someone whose world was colored by it. I think a huge part of why games like these did that for me and countless other fans was how they took something as bombastic, distinct, and to some, borderline abstract as a Dragon Ball Z battle, and shrank it down to something you could scope and control on your TV with your puny human fingers. It was in this way that an internal logic was given to some of the most baffling elements that made Dragon Ball feel so alien to people. A trope that's easy to make fun of, such as characters charging their energy, seen in the show as these ridiculously drawn-out sequences of people flexing and yelling for no discernible purpose, was given a direct link to gameplay and practical logic in the games, illustrated in a matter of harnessing literal energy to be spent on special moves in battle, creating a link between the bizarre narrative and applied to make the concept click for just about anybody. It was one thing to watch characters fly, send each other shooting through buildings, and throw laser beams, but it was entirely another to control these matters with a press of a button. The white-knuckle, intense battles of Dragon Ball are its adrenaline-fueled bread and butter. It's really a no-brainer why it's fun to play in a video game, but it's a separate and equal matter how it helped ground Dragon Ball for newcomers everywhere, and changed one's ideas of not just how a fight looks, but how one operates. If you're like me, it's that element that got you hooked, and as one of many junkies at the mercy of Padre Goku's unending stream of content, the only thing that had to be done to continue to get my attention was to make the games bigger and better every time. Games would add more and more characters, transformations, moves, and stages, to the point that Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 would touch the sky with its roster of 98 separate characters, who can be staggered into separate forms of essentially 161 unique movesets. As absolutely absurd as that sounds, over decades of story and characters, it's somewhat plain to see how a game can have 20 Gokus and not feel totally cheap, because as much as folks love Goku, everyone has a favorite Goku from his many, many years of battle, to the point that perhaps some will want to compare them. Characters in Dragon Ball are practically stepping stones in of themselves. It wasn't a story with combat so much as it was a story told by combat, and as such, comparing character strength was a frequent shorthand. The best idea of how strong Frieza is, and by extension how high the narrative stakes were, was begotten by comparing him to Vegeta, who's portentous when compared to Nappa, who speaks volumes compared to Raditz. With this very literal hierarchy and occasional caveats here and there, a slew of desired dream matches were an inevitable aftermath. How does Cell measure up to Majin Buu? Gogeta or Vegito, Broly or Janemba. Some games let you set up whole platoons of fighters like chess pieces before firing the starter pistol and seeing how Captain Ginyu and Android 17 square off. Of course, packaged with Dragon Ball's rich, diverse, and specific lore is a tendency for fans to needle for the accurate and properly scaled interactions of power. Games like Tenkaichi 3 feel more like direct simulators than actually competitive fighting game. No, you won't be able to beat Omega Shenron playing as Hercule. At least not very easily. And this is the point where I could be rather critical because, yeah, it's fun to have bizarre deep cuts like Kui, General Blue, and Zangia. But one may wonder what the point is when you can just choose Frieza's strongest form and win. And with that in mind, I don't think one should underestimate the power of a niche favorite either. A big part of Toriyama's talent as a mangaka are his ability to bestow memorable designs and quirks into so many characters that are ultimately just meant to be cannon fodder. I know I may be the biggest fan of King Piccolo's underling, Tambourine, out there, and I was doing backflips when he was put into a video game. I bet many could say the same for characters like the Ginyu Force's put-upon Private Jeice, Bardock's wartime buddy Fasha, and the short-lived Android 19. It's just nice to see your favorite little guy got some regards, and especially with a fandom as huge and long-lived as Dragon Ball, there's gotta be someone for everyone. Even if that does beget the kinda crushing discovery that no matter how much you like Yajirobe, he's just not making a dent in Hirudegarn. Or is he? After all, you know who else is considered weaker than most late-game fusions and villains in games like these? The original Dragon Ball Kid Goku, who probably couldn't even beat a Cyberman as he's seen here, and yet we know that the god-fighting, planet-quaking Super Saiyan Goku is somewhere in there. All it took was training and experience from a narrative point of view, and the same could be said for every character in the Budokai games. The Budokai games, as far back as their roots, introduced customization elements that let one mix and match a character's moves and qualities, and these would sort of transition as time went on into stat and power boosts, meaning yes, with time and training, you can have a version of Nam who can lay the smackdown on Super 17. Dragon Ball is a journey entirely about getting stronger to overcome your rivals and leap over impossible plateaus. But who said that had to just apply to Goku and friends? Why not Goldo or Pilaf? These games made that possible. And after you soup your characters up with a dozen additional life bars and enough power-ups to leave a dent in the moon, you could revisit the dream match aspect and bring stories to life you always wanted to see. If you're like me and have a love for the niche movie villain Android 13, you could take him on a rampage of every face in the universe and make him so much more than that. Or if you always felt cheated out of the underdog to champion story Oob should have had, all that's needed is for you to take him on a journey by picking him and saving the world from any villain of your choosing. And if you don't go about doing that kind of thing yourself, you best believe the games will often set up a few wacky new stories on their own, with what-if scenarios proving that these games were made by fans doing the very same experimentation. From a saga devoted to Raditz developing the same amnesia as Goku and going down a new path, Spike the Devilman coming out of his long-tenured retirement and using his signature technique to stop Frieza's invasion of Earth, and Tien and Yamcha putting all pretenses of their sideline dispositions aside by fusing to form Tiencha. All instances less conceivable than the wildest dreams of the original manga and anime, and yet, despite their outlandishness, feel right at home here. Dragon Ball's gigantic universe and peerless possibilities weren't just used to draw fans in, but to explode their imaginations with every left field turn one could take. It's one thing for fandom to have the staying power to enrich fans with the desire to engage with this sort of thing, but it's entirely another and speaks volumes that seemingly every team that wants to adapt Dragon Ball to video game form wants to put their own twist on these characters, and not just the ones considered conventionally strong or important. And it's in this way that Dragon Ball games made every character, and as such, every fan of these characters feel like they mattered, and that's an incredible thing. So if you feel alone in your fandom for Apul, Android 8, or Spopovich, know there's at least some outlet for you.